Hello, this is Bailey Sorrigan, talking about my project for the Folio subject. Basically, the premise of the assignment was to create audio and visual assets for a given Kickstarter that we got given a list and we were able to choose through. The Kickstarter that I chose was Titanic, the Titanic experience, where there was a few different options you could take, whether you wanted to talk about the like after the sinking, exploring it. It was basically exploring either the wreckage or before the ship sank. I decided to uh, design my folio after the idea of before it sunk. So they called it Titanic, the Unsunken Experience. Um, Basically, just an introduction to the folio. Um, where we'll be focusing on experiencing the sinking, which is part of the prompt. Um, the Firstly, for the research report, I basically just researched about the Titanic, um, lots of different reference images on different styles and the types of objects that would be on the Titanic and that were on the Titanic when it was in operation before it sunk, along with references, of course. Moving on to the mood board, basically just a collection of images that I've, of course, referenced. Um, some textures as well, just to get the feel of the sort of items that were on board, what the rooms would have looked like. Um, just a general vibe of the entire ship. The assets list and management, just a simple how I organized all the assets with the 3D models, background interactable. So stuff like the whistle would be interactable, and raft would be interactable, but something like the table might be background. Even the chair you could interact, or it could be a background. I set it as a background, but along with the audio assets as well, between player, sound effects, ambience, which are all in the asset list here, along with if they're looped, the duration. For the visual assets, the textures, and what they're related to. So the whistle is related to the whistle MP4, which is down here, and same with the raft is connected to the waves, that sort of thing. With the project timeline, for the most part, followed this quite closely, sometimes dropped behind. For example, in the final, I dropped behind the audio assets a bit. I ended up developing the visual assets first as well, and I developed the audio assets a little bit later than I would have liked. Um, Moving on to asset development, just original planned assets of all the assets, the visual and the audios, and how I originally thought that I would develop them, and how I would get the original sounds, with the just a few sketches and the process of modeling these different assets, starting with the cube, getting the back and the seat, and then the legs, adding on the cushion, and then texturing, of course. Same with this, starting with a disc, taking the legs out, reshaping it, getting the cloth in just a general shape, adjusting the height, and then beveling it over here just to make it look more natural, along with texturing to make it look like an actual cloth that's been draped over rather than just a stiff thing. With the boat, just creating general shape, adding the ridges, adding the planks in, adding small details like these notches and the little hook, and just getting a general shape for it as well, and then texturing as well. Moving on to the final assets for just a basic show of how I developed these assets, or how the assets turned out, I guess. Different views, front on, orthographic, like above, below, just to get a general feel of what the assets looked like in a 3D space. Um, Unfortunately, Wix doesn't allow for the actual 3D files to be imported. I tried very hard to do that, but it just doesn't allow it. So I would have loved to have a 3D model you could drag around and look around, but unfortunately it wouldn't work. Um, And yeah, for the table, and of course for the boat as well, under view, all different views, some cinematic views of on the boat. Just getting a close look at the hook there. And of course audio assets, just basically going through. Just starting with a creaking ship, I made this by having a railing and sort of just pushing it back and forth, like stair railing, and just creaking it back and forth. With the cutlery, obviously clicking cutlery together, all this has been edited as well, changing the pitch, changing ambience, the whistle. I wanted to sound a bit more far away, so I changed some with that. Wind, basically just like general wind. Waves. I wanted a motor sound in the background as well, just to have a sort of more of an ambience to it. Glass cracking, along with the walking as well. Just walking down the hallway, changing the ambience, the pitch, getting a bit of an echo. Breathing, basically just breathing into the mic and adjusting it in like afterwards as well. And moving on to the match. Basically just striking a match, adjusting the pitch slightly and the volume slightly, along with the glass clink as well. All of the audio assets made by myself, edited by myself as well. And then moving on to the reflection, where I basically talked about at each stage of the folio, the first, second, and the final. Just explaining thought process, where I'm up to, and how I feel. Am I happy with what I've achieved? Summarizing what I've done so far, and if there's anything I would have liked to do differently. Obviously for these, the stuff I'd like to do differently, I tried my best to implement in the next installment, I guess, of the folio. But for this, it was more wishful thinking of what I wish I could have done if I had more time. And yeah, that sums up the overall rundown of the folio I've created and everything that I have achieved across the duration of this assignment. Thank you very much for listening.